So I was cruising past my local record shop the other day when I popped inside and look what I found on the cheap. Yeah, Cheap Thrills by Big Brother and the Holding Company. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And it was on the cheap because it was advertised as having a little bit of crackle. But when it's a second pressing from Australia from 1968, 56 years old, I don't mind if it's got a little bit of crackle. Hell, I'm older than that and I've got some crackle as well. So I took it home, put it on the turntable, and all of a sudden these beautiful memories started flooding back to me. I haven't heard this album in about 20 years, I would suggest, and it was a formative part of my psychedelic music education. So I decided to come onto YouTube and talk to you guys about it. But a little bit of discovery showed me that there were already some fantastic people doing great reviews on YouTube of this album. So I needed some inspiration from somewhere because I wanted to come on and have a conversation about it. And that's when I stumbled onto, well, not stumbled, I'm subscribed to Robert Fitton's hilarious video where he goes track versus track between the Beach Boys' Loves You album and a blank 8-track cartridge. Absolutely wonderful. So what I decided to do, just to mix it up a bit, is to go track versus artwork. So we're going to go song by song and compare them each to the image and to find out whether it's the cover that's iconic or the music that is within the sleeve. Who's going to come out on top? Let's find out. I'm acting as judge, juror, and referee because I have my Janice t-shirt on, which I bought from the Gulf State Museum in Port Arthur. It's worth checking out sometime. And let's begin. In the left corner, we have the album itself. I won't go into too much detail, but the bottom line is Big Brother is signed to Mainstream Records. They do Monterey Pop. They get discovered. CBS and Albert Grossman buys them out of their Mainstream Records deal. And all of a sudden, they're heading over to New York and to LA, produced by John Simon, to produce Sex, Dope, and Cheap Thrills, later cut down to Cheap Thrills. And that's where we have that. On the other hand, the cover goes through also an interesting situation where initially they want to have a photo of the band naked in bed, but that gets nixed. Then they get a fashion photographer, Richard Avedon, to come out, and according to Dave Getz, his photos are more about Avedon than they are about the band. And so Janice and Dave get the idea, I think it was Dave again, gets the idea to call up R. Crumb, the great cartoonist of the counterculture. And he comes down to see the band play a couple of times. He's already familiar with Janice and likes Janice, but doesn't like the band, doesn't like the music, but decides he's going to pull an all-nighter, get on the speed, and produce the cover. And so that's exactly what he did. So that's the cover in the right-hand corner. Now let's get into it, but we're not going to start with the first track. We're going to start with the introductions to the album. And it begins on the record with Bill Graham announcing the band as ladies and gentlemen, 4 guys and one great, great broad, Big Brother. And here we have the seeds of doom already sown for the breakup of the band and Janice's stardom. But it's really interesting that it was only months previous that Bill Graham really disliked the band and Janice, apparently because Janice had espoused the value of the competition, the Avalon Ballroom, but also because she said that the Fillmore was a place for drunken sailors to get laid. Still, Bill changed his tune really quickly after Monterey and the deal with CBS, and he understood where the money was coming from, so he started booking Big Brother and the Holding Company. On the other hand, we have the cover, which you can see hopefully the image right there. And it's Janice saying, playing and singing you the following tunes. And this is kind of cool until you have a good close look at that microphone. And it seems to be shaped in a distinctive fashion, a distinctive phallus of fashion. And Janice is pointing her finger right at it. So that's kind of slightly distasteful as well. So because Bill changed his tune and because of the shape of the microphone, I'm going to split this one and give a half a point to the music and half a point to the artwork. Combination of the two not only opens Cheap Thrills, but it also provided the music for the opening credits of Monterey Pop by D.A. Pennebaker. And it starts with that iconic guiro before exploding into this twin guitar assault by Sam Andrew and James Gurley. It's an absolute thing of beauty. And then the whole band kicks in with this funky groove going, woo-hoo, yeah, yeah, which might have been out of tune, but, that's something that Big Brother and I often have in common. Um, Sam starts to get into the lyrics and talking about feel more, feel more. And so I referenced there to the Fillmore, and he talks about the Avalon in the second verse as well. So Sam can sell out a bit too. Then we move into a wonderful, mind-melting acid rock guitar solo by James Gurley, which just seems to go on forever, but goes into sort of all these interesting places before coming back at the end to the choral section. The sounded like Mork from Mork and Minnie there doing a bit of nano nano, didn't I? But still, it doesn't matter. But what does matter maybe is that we've got fake crowd noise on here. Apparently, Big Brother recorded, or CBS recorded them performing in 1968 at Winterland, I would have to say it was, in the hope of making this a live album. But the band sucked so much that they went into the studio and wasted many hours and lots of money trying to get the band really to get on song. So they sort of infiltrated the album with a lot of crowd noise. Now, I don't know about this sort of fakery because, not being there at the time, it sort of took me back to sort of being at the Fillmore, or took me to being at the Fillmore, which I don't mind so much. But it becomes a bit glaring when it's only applied to one or two songs and not to them all. In fact, only one song was recorded live on this album, but we'll get to that later. So that's the music. Now, in the right corner, let's have a look at this album cover, and you should be able to see it right there. And what I really like here is that we have a very sort of a music hall song and dance type of idea, treading the boards, the spotlights on them. It's all really cool and groovy. Great piece of artwork, but it doesn't really do it for me that much to knock out the recorded version of combination of the two. So we'll give it to the music on this occasion. I Need a Man to Love is the next song up, and this is where Janice starts to take full flight with the vocals, and she starts off with some really yearning vocals. I think this is a nice, cool groove, this song. It really settles into a funky workout here, and Janice comes over the top and sings with a yearning sort of a sound to her voice, which shows she was capable of great delicacy. And then we pound into the can't be now, can't be now, can't be this loneliness, baby surrounding me. And I love the lyric, I want to put my arms around you like circles going around the sun. It's really cool. Great vocal from Janice. And then we go into the twin guitar interplay by Sam and James again with a wonderful solo. Really works well. And that was sort of a little bit of a staple at the times. I mean, these guys aren't any Gary Duncan and John Cipollina from Quicksilver, but they've still got some great sounds going on, which even picks up more on the next song. So really kind of cool song, and I love it very much. And then we go into the artwork, which is a picture one would assume of Janice sitting on a flower power bed and the window being held open by a bottle of whiskey, certainly a bottle of alcohol. And it does convey all those ideas of needing a man to love. Quite a seductive pose, quite a sense of a woman in control here. But once again, I'm going with the music. I love the song. I Need a Man to Love wins out for me. So that's another point to the music. Their cover of Summertime, the Gershwin Brothers song from Porgy and Bess, is up next. And this one has really divided people over the years. For me, I think it's probably the best track on the album, but other people think it's too bombastic, maybe not respectful enough to the original. They saw it being recorded with the Big Brother in the recording studio on the Janis documentary and realized how tough it was for them to play what is not a specifically really difficult arrangement, but it was really at the peak of their level in terms of their abilities on instruments. Still, and you can hear that if you listen to versions of it live, it's very rare to get a perfect one, if you want to call it that. But still, it's a wonderful, wonderful vocal by Janice, which has pain and yearning in every hoarse and husky note. The guitar arpeggios from Sam and James and the twin guitar interplay is stunning. And then we go into a solo in the middle from Sam, which takes us off into different astral lands and floats up in the air before coming back down to earth with the most delicate and precious arpeggios to finish the song before Janice comes back in. But still, it's an absolutely killer song, a thing of rare beauty. And let's compare it now to, in the red corner, the album image, which I'm not going to show you because I think it's egregious and objectionable, and maybe it was something of the time, but it doesn't mean that we have to show it now in this time. So a clear win now here to the music and Cheap Thrills. The record gets another point. Side A rounds off with a cover of Piece of My Heart, which became the hit on the album. And I used to love this back in the day. I love the opening guitar riff, and I remember driving around with the window down and having the wind going through my hair and singing along. To me now, though, it seems really out of place. They've taken a really cool soul song by Irma Franklin, Aretha's sister, and they've turned it into this sort of stodgy, hoedown country sort of stomper. I'm not a real fan, and I don't really care whether I hear it again. And for a decent guitar player, Sam's solo in the break is absolutely loathsome. So not a real fan anymore. Even though it is such a classic. And now we compare that to the album image, which is really also loathsome. It's a monstrous image of misogyny. And check out the dude wanting to get into that hard and the way he's licking his lips. But having said that, I'm going to take sort of an opposite point of view and say this is what Robert Crumb is actually pointing out, that rather than sort of picking yourself up when your man does you wrong, just be aware that the man is going to do you wrong and run the hell away from him as quickly as possible. So partly because I'm a bit over this song, and partly because I think there's some cleverness to the image, it's time to score one for the image. Before the needle drops on side two, let's have a look at the way it was supposed to start, because there was a little instrumental called Harry by Dave Getz, a free jazz improvisational thing, actually not fully instrumental, which was supposed to start the album. But it's a bizarre, weird, frankly strange piece of nonsense if you get a chance to listen to it. I'd like to quote, in sort of summing it up, from John Simon, the producer, who was trying to give them some feedback when they finished the song in the studio. And he said something along the lines of, I give it a 73. And then he says, you want to know what I really want to hit? You want to hear it? He says, it's hard for me to know what criteria you're using to judge this song. That's how bizarre it is, and I kind of agree. Now, when R. Crumb got the track listing for the album, he had first song on side two was Harry, and Harry was Harry Kirshner, Hari Krishna. It was an in-joke of the band. And so if we look at the image there, they had to change everything and get rid of Harry, and they had to put their Art R. Crumb. And that's why we have R. Crumb dressed up like a Swami in front of all these Middle Eastern minarets and towers of the city in the background. But I think it's a really cool piece of art. Apparently, R. Crumb wasn't that thrilled about it when he saw it, but still, I'm giving the point here in the mythical Lost Track Challenge to the artwork. The needle does drop down onto side two, and we're thrown into the world of Barney's Beanery, a Mexican restaurant slash pub that many rock stars and movie stars used to frequent in LA. And it's here that we hear John Simon start tinkling the piano and taking us into the world of Turtle Blues. It's very much a ubiquitous blues song that so many psychedelic bands used to play to sort of show their credentials. But it's saved here by a fantastic heartfelt vocal by Janice, who wrote the lyrics for this. And she says, I guess I'm just like a turtle that's hiding underneath its horny shell. But you know, I'm very well protected. I know this goddamn life too well. But I'm going to take care of Janice. Ain't no one going to dog me down. I adore the solo from Peter on here on the acoustic. It really just is laid back, but builds up with some tension. It has a fanging, authentic feel to it. The only sort of downside of this is the vibes from Barney Beanery. Is apparently this was the last place that Janice visited before she died. So with that pall hanging over it, it's also quite a sad song because the turtle shell didn't end up protecting her. Going over to the image now, well, what more do you need? You got a turtle smoking a cigar, reading the form guide with the backdrop of with the night sky and the buildings there. It's a great piece of artwork, and for that reason, I think I'm going to give it to the image here. although it's being a bit unfair, but so well, let's even things up. 1 point to the art. Oh, Sweet Mary is up next. And while one would think this was about Sweet Mary Jane, I'm sort of not picking that up from the lyrics, although we're definitely going back into the more acid rock psychedelic realm with the music. I like this song a lot, but there's one thing that really distracts me from it, and that's because the guitar lines that Peter Alban is playing on this are so reminiscent, if not stolen, from their own song Cuckoo, which was a standalone single a year or so previously. So, but who would have known that? It was a completely obscure single. Well, in Australia, we knew it because when the first album came out, Cuckoo was the song which closed off side one. So when I first heard Oh Sweet Mary, I was going, what the hell is that? And then I realized it was basically, in many ways, the same song. Although Oh Sweet Mary does go into different directions. Some great lines here. Oh, sweet Mary, child of confusion, she runs the hills to cry. Past the willows or an illusion. Lord, tell me the reason why. Then we have great sort of sitar-inspired solo in here, which definitely does take us into a different territory to Cuckoo. And then that passage at the end where the whispered words of why, why. And if you listen closely in the right-hand channel, there is a sitar playing, unless it's my excursion into psychoacoustics. But I think it's there, and whether it's an electric or an acoustic sitar, it's really cool. It might be playing all the way through the song, but it's privileged there, and it should be a lot louder. And Sam goes absolutely mental on the bass. Mental! So, cool song, kind of like it, but it does have that problem of sort of thieving, stealing from themselves, which is okay. It just takes away some of the gloss for me when I'm listening to it. And so, going over to the image now, we have this incredible sight of these two unwashed children. This makes me sound so old. Two unwashed children with pimples all over their face and sets of the biggest lips I've ever seen, with a heart between them. And I don't know what that thing is in the middle down the bottom. It looks like a rat or a weasel or something, but it's okay. And it sort of gets across an idea, I suppose. So this time I'm going to give the chocolates to the music itself. Oh Sweet Mary, the recorded version, gets the points. Which brings us to the final track on the album, and it's the song that we had to have. Yes, it's their incendiary cover of Big Mama Thornton's Ball and Chain. From the very opening of those guitar notes, those 5 distorted guitar notes, bum, 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 and then that pregnant pause where the air is particulate, and then a maelstrom of acidic rock just descends upon us, pounding through our speakers before dropping right back down and welcoming us into this world of Janice's most incredible vocal. She wails, she soothes, she hollers, she stomps all the way through this song and gives us a performance for the ages. And let's not forget James Gurley's guitar solo here. It is an acidic rock guitar masterpiece. It has echoes of Eastern sounds, blues rock sounds, and it just cuts the air into little slices and pieces before we holler out and stomp towards the end of the song again. It's absolutely incredible. Now, unlike what it says on the sort of, or implies on the cover, this was recorded at Winterland, which was a much larger venue, which featured on the band's Last Waltz and also the Sex Pistols' last ever gig. And it's appropriate to me that you have a couple of those iconic moments tripled up now with Big Brother and the Holding Company's performance of Ball and Chain. Absolutely wonderful. And I agree totally with Mama Cass going, wow, unbelievable. Going over to the image on the album cover, I think it's a pretty good image. It's suggesting that Janice here is a prisoner of love. There's an evil intensity to the sun in the background, and we've got colors that are oranges and yellows, contrasting with the black and white of Janice in the prisoner's outfit and the ball and chain. Still, you can't overlook the power and the majesty of the recorded version, and quite clearly in the left-hand corner, it's the recorded version which gets the points. Let's finish off by giving some bonus points for the musician's performance on the album versus the artwork for the individual musicians. And we start off with Janis Joplin herself. Great image here, huge mouth screaming and screeching into that microphone, the speech bubble which says, "and how." Awesome visualization of her. Janis Joplin vocal, huge font and huge size of writing, absolutely appropriate. But however, we still have to give Janis the musician the points here. A point to her because she's absolutely brilliant on this. Then over to Sam Houston Andrew III. Sam does some great things on this album. His arrangement of Summertime is superb. A couple of genius guitar solos. Now, in terms of the image there, what we do is we see all these blonde goddesses in the audience gazing up at Sam saying scream and sigh and pant, pant. And it just shows us that there was an appeal for Sam, long-haired, semi-talented junkies at the time. But this was an image. I love this artwork, and I'm going to give half a point here to Robert Crumb and half a point to Sam Andrews playing, which is unfair, but it's a really great image. Then we move on to Pete and Dave Getz. And Pete, as I was saying, on the bass, he's a man like Janis who, if you can have the choice of playing one note, why not play 10? And he does it throughout the album. A couple of really good guitar solos, particularly on Turtle Blues. Great job. And here he is just looking into his eye like this, really whacked out. Nothing compared, though, to Dave Getz. So let's give points there to Pete and Dave. I'm going to give them... they're not the greatest rhythm section in the world. They're as sloppy as hell, but by God, they improvised and went for it. So I'm going to give them, as a rhythm section, a point over the artistic work of R. Crumb, which brings us to James Gurley, who produced two of the most unbelievable, powerful, firework-ridden solos of all time. But that image is absolutely cool. He's got his third eye happen. He's just freaking with his third eye. He's got the joint hanging out of his mouth and a halo over his head. R. Crumb really gets James Gurley absolutely perfect here. So a point to R. Crumb. And I think that just about gives us all of the songs here, all of the images here, though. I will look at the live material recorded at Bill Graham's Fillmore Auditorium, which, as I said, is completely misleading because the live material was done at the Winterland. But there's some great images there. I think, is that Fritz the Cat right down in the bottom there, just underneath the cop? And I love the guy on the bottom left-hand corner says, "I think I'll drop out." Really cool. Great image. So in terms of the music venue versus R. Crumb, I'm really stretching it here, but I'm going to give a point to R. Crumb for that. And finally, we come up to the last bit, which is at the bottom right-hand side, which is the approved by Hell's Angels Frisco logo. And these must have been the same peace and love Hell's Angels who were hired to protect everybody and provide security at Altamont. Don't know. Really don't know. Anyway, the album finishes off with Bill Graham saying, "Good night and thank you for coming and have a happy Sunday." And as we wheel ourselves away from the Winterland Ballroom and Cheap Thrills by Big Brother and the Holding Company and roll down the road to the next album that we're going to listen to or the next concert, I'd like to think back on this as being a very, very pleasurable experience to reacquaint myself with this album. And I hope that you've enjoyed coming on the journey with me. And remember, if music of any size, shape, or artwork gives you pleasure, then who am I to argue with your opinion? Check out the links to some of my other album reviews and songs that I might have been recording. I'd love you to enjoy what I've been doing for the past years, months, days, even minutes. And until next time we meet up, hope you're doing really well, and bye now.